Hey, hi. We are going to talk about continuous testing, especially the road to continuous testing. So, we are going to talk about different techniques, recommendations, methodologies, applications, and tools so you and your teams can start in this road to continuous testing and achieve high quality products. My name is Mauricio Arroyave. I am a QA lead in UX Global, powered by Veritas Automata. And I decided to talk about continuous testing because companies need to reach that level where everyone in the project is focused on testing and have that same approach so we can deliver faster and quality products. First of all, let's talk about the essence of DevOps and continuous testing. DevOps is a combination of development and operations and is used to increase efficiency to deploy the application at different levels, but also define architecture, infrastructures, follow the commits, the changes for the code. And continuous testing is an approach of software testing where you are testing the application every step of the way of the software development lifecycle. So the idea is to use some of the tools you have in DevOps, but that doesn't mean continuous testing is only DevOps. You can use techniques and you have frameworks and other kind of elements that can help you achieve that continuous testing, allowing you to verify inconsistencies and validate your application every stage of the software development lifecycle. Continuous testing has multiple benefits, but the biggest benefit here is that everyone is going to be focused on quality. So we have testing a whole team approach on testing, and that way we can provide updates faster, deliver faster functionalities to the final users, but also all the time we are checking the status of our application, how it's going, if you have inconsistencies, if maybe the performance is not optimal. And that way, even if we are in the early stages of a sprint or a functionality or even an application, we are always trying to have quality in our mind and testing so we can start testing as soon as we can. Before we talk about the software development lifecycle, I want to mention that these are stages in the software development process. I mean, it doesn't matter if you are using waterfall or you are using Scrum or any agile methodology, you're going to be in these stages at any moment of those methodologies you use. So if we start with analysis, that is usually the early stage, or even if you're using Scrum, you're going to have grooming meetings. There, you can use techniques like BDD, behavior and driven development, to define testing scenarios. Here, you are not using coding or any tool, just write in plain English scenarios that can determine how the application is going to work. It's a very useful tool because everyone in the team is going to start talking the same language. You are going to mix together the business and the technical world, and everyone is going to understand how is everything going. And from here, you can even identify inconsistencies in your application because you are going to raise questions, define different approaches to your application, your functionalities. And that way, as you can see, you're not using any tool at all. You're just talking and defining scenarios. Now, when you go to development, if you work with BDD, you can have that income as a potential unit tests. And same, if you use TDD, that is test-driven development, you can take those scenarios and have smaller ones, again, write them, code them, and work with the software framework, testing framework, to run them and check they are passing. Again, we are testing and we are in a coding stage. Maybe we'll have a final application right now, but we are testing. And those unit tests, you can take them and put them in a pipeline. And every time a commit or change goes to the repository, you are going to verify everything still works. Another important thing here is communication, because if I'm defining new scenarios, maybe something changed, maybe I cannot implement something specifically because the technology doesn't allow me to do that. Well, I can go back, define new scenarios, but mention it to the PO, tester, and everyone involved in the team, so they are aware something is going to change. Now, from the testing stage, here we are not only running test cases or writing test cases, we can take that output from the analysis, the scenarios, to create new test cases and write automated test cases. That's what it's for. But we need to organize everything we have. I mean, how are we going to take all those elements, test, environments, scenarios, and time, and make the most of them? So we need to define test scenarios, test plans. Where are we going to test everything? Because, for example, performance testing is not very good to do it at the earliest stages, like dev and test, because the infrastructure is not the same like you have in production. So maybe you should have a pre-production environment where you can run the performance test. You can run performance, but a small level in those early stages, but you should better have a different one to test it. Same thing for regression. Where are you going to run them? A smoke test, integration. I mean, you need to define different things here, and it is not just test the functionalities. Again, this outcome that are scenarios and tests and even exploratory sessions, you can have in a pipeline. You can define some time, schedule some time to run those tests and get feedback from it. And the deployment part, again, this doesn't mean it's the last part of the process. It's not the deployment to production. It's deployment to different environments. So if we test early and we are in this road to continuous testing, we can add those test cases moving from dev to test. And once we do that, we identify inconsistencies, maybe something is not working as expected, and we can fix it there. We don't need to wait till the end of the process, and that is going to give us time and is going to give us more quality to our process. Also, we can run tests in parallel if we are using different browsers, different devices. That way, we can have them all together at the same time. It doesn't matter if it's before going to production, you can do that, just moving between stages internally. It's important that during this deployment phase, you can have logs and charts and dashboards, information that can give you feedback to know where to go from. And it's not for the testers, it's for everyone in the team. So the charts should be understandable. If the DevOps is working on something, maybe he knows what's going on and he can fix it, or at least raise a hand and say, hey, I think it's happening because of this or that, a database issue, maybe a framework or a version issue with the elements we're using to code. Now, here is something very specific to automated tests, that is the con pyramid. And the con pyramid is a concept where you should have automated tests, but most of them should be unit tests. Happens a lot that teams that are starting with this or with automation, they decide to have everything automated for the UI, but it's very expensive. And the maintenance is high because every time something changes, and if your application is not built to be automated, because that happens usually, then you're going to have a lot of UI tests, very, very expensive, and you're going to be all the time updating them. So you need to have a lot of unit tests that can come from the analysis stages, for example, and you should have a medium-sized portion of those to be API tests that can help you test the communication between other applications, the integrations you have. And UI tests should be only for end-to-end tests, that you're going to check how a procedure from the beginning to end, like buying a product or creating a user, all those kind of things, you should have it in the UI. And it's very important to follow this pattern so you can have very, very robust and fast automated tests. Now, the question is, should I have manual or automated tests? And you should have both. You can have automated tests for repetitive tasks, like running regressions, acceptance tests, generate report, generate data, and even to improve the speed of your test runs. But you should have also manual testing to organize everything, to specify your test plans, your test scenarios, the scope of your tests, how are you going to handle flaky tests, for example, that is very important, and also understand what are you doing that goes with the scope, how I'm going to handle this scope, is it too much, is not, what kind of tests I'm going to run, and organize everything so it's faster for the pipelines, for example, to define and run the the tests you have. And another important thing for manual testing is exploratory tests. You shouldn't automate exploratory testing because, again, it takes a lot of time and maintenance to have them working all the time. So here you can define exploratory scenarios and define some time in your sprint to run them and check how the application works. Now, we have some tools that you can use for test automation, and we have a lot of options. And every day we're going to have more options. Now that the AI is coming to play, some of these are going to be improved, or we're going to have new ones. But you can have from libraries like Selenium, Appium, Cucumber, SpecFlow to frameworks already built like Playwright, like Catalan, that can have everything you need to start. They have reports, they have integration, they can connect easily to orchestrators, and that way you can just set up your test, connect them, and run them. If you need something specific for APIs, you have things like Postman or SOAP UI, but also for projects or teams that doesn't have the experience or wants a simple approach that is not that simple as it sounds, you can have tools like Leapwork, Testing, or Maple that are no code. That way you can record and play what you do, and you can tweak it a bit if you need more scenarios, and you can easily connect them to a CI/CD tool and run your test cases in every process, in every part of the pipeline. Now, talking about orchestrators, here are a few of them, the most used ones. And we have Jenkins, Azure DevOps, Circles AI. And again, it doesn't mean these are the only ones you should use. You have options. It all depends on what you need, what do you expect, and what do you have currently in your project. Because maybe you have everything defined in Jenkins and you're trying to use a framework or a tool that doesn't work well with it. Okay, so you need to change the tool, or you decide to move everything from your orchestrator. You need to define there what to do. But a good strategy here is that if you want to change your libraries or your tools or your orchestrators, you can have moments in your sprint to experiment with something. Get a piece of your application, move it to a new orchestrator or a new framework, and see how it goes, and then start moving everything from it. But it's a team decision, what goes best for them. And for example, if you have already something working with Azure DevOps and a framework with C Sharp, you just plug it, it's good working, just move from there. It's important to build culture of quality, and I already mentioned behavior-driven development, test-driven development, and phases of the software development lifecycle. But what I want to mention here is communication is key. That's where the three amigos come to play. That is something that comes from agile testing, and is that every time we're going to discuss something or we have a question related to functionality, architecture, database, anything related to the application, we should have at least three people in that meeting: a PO or someone from business, a tester, and a developer. If we can have more, it would be great. We can have the DevOps, we can have an expert. Maybe we are working on an application for lawyers and we have an expert lawyer, we can bring him in. But the idea is to have everyone talking and speaking the same language, that everyone understand that what I say, a topic or a word, it means the same for everyone. And that way, if something changes, we know what can be affected, the risk we have, or if we are following the right path. So it's very important to keep the communication, but involve every time the people that needs to be aware of the changes. Of course, that to be in that road to continuous testing, we are going to have challenges. And some of these challenges are going to come in the way, like bottlenecks, not necessarily testing that is taking too much time, but maybe Our design process is very slow because we need someone external to approve our documents. Is something we need to get rid of, or maybe the tools we are using for DevOps are slow as well. We haven't updated them, and those kind of things you need to find workarounds to have our pipelines running smoothly. As I mentioned, the lack of experience or knowledge. Then how can we improve that knowledge in our team, or maybe find easier tools for them to start working with? No code tools, maybe start with a framework, or maybe they are right now practicing with the language in the library. We can start with that. The bad test case design is also an issue there, because usually what happens is the testers create automated tests based on the manual test cases, and then start to have big scenarios that are very hard to automate. Is something that they need to change, define how to do it and know what to do, is something very important. The large scope, we have automation now we want to automate everything. If that's not the idea, we should define what to test, when to test it, and it's very important to have that clear. And the lack of trust. Maybe some managers don't trust the process because they don't seeing results right away, or maybe and a sponsor say, okay, this is not what I expected. But it's important to keep that trust and show this is giving results, because in the end, it's going to be a very good experience for everyone to see that we are checking the inconsistencies and validating the application all the time. We have some examples here. Optimizely in the USA had an issue with the regression testing, was very slow, and they had low regression tests. So they decided to use Cypress, that allowed them to run test cases 4 times faster and increase the new feature coverage. This is very important, because if I'm going to release something new to my users, I can cover automatically 40% of those functionalities. So I'm going to be checking that before it goes to release. That usually is not like that. You need to release, and then you create automated test cases for it. We have Sweden and Slovakia that had issues with slow manual testing and code migration issues, and they used Cypress again to cover 100% of the crucial user stories. As I mentioned, scope, what is crucial for us. We don't have time, and we don't have the infrastructure to do all we want. Okay, but we can define what is crucial and what can be automated and what goes in that pipeline and when to run it before it goes to production. We have Motionsoft in the USA that had issues with the smoke test. A lot of smoke tests, they decided to use Subject 7, that is a no-code tool, and now they are executing 3,600 automated tests daily. Important here, why daily? Well, maybe every time they check in something to the repository, they need to run those test cases. In the past, they had issues that every code change is breaking the application, so they decided to use this approach. And here we can see that mix of manual and automated tests. Why to do it like that? Maybe in the future they're going to reduce it. Maybe they are going to have a moment when they need to run all those test cases at the same time. And we have an example of Remark System that is a global company, and they needed to improve testing coverage and the low time they had to test. And here we have been helping them for a couple of years. It's not only automated tests. We created a framework for it, but we have been helping them with the QA process. So what we do is that we started testing at the very beginning of the process, during the design stage, during the coding stages. In that way, we can find inconsistencies faster. Because the issue before was we only had 2 weeks to test, and everything was tested at the end. It was a problem because we had a lot of bugs, and we need to delay the pass to production. But here we have increased the coverage by 50%. In the same time, we have the chance to test in different browsers, and now instead of 300 test cases that we did in those 2-3 weeks, now we are running 1,500 test cases, and that's a very, very, very good for us. It's still in progress, but we are very happy with what we have. So in the end, to achieve continuous testing, you need to mix a lot of things, tools, techniques, your team, and some expertise as well. And maybe you can remove some, maybe you can add other ones. In fact, some teams are already in this road, they are using some elements. But the important thing here is if you're in the road, keep there. If you're not there, start going to that road, because in the end, once you implement continuous testing, you are going to reduce your costs, deliver faster, and have high quality products. And that's all I had for today.